All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I am your host. I am your guide, as together we will cross this time-space continuum to a place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and in Ontario, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM, and they stream us on classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. My first guest tonight, X Zone Nation, is Tom Whitmore, and he's a retired financial analyst. He resides in San Antonio, Texas. He's been involved in the UFO field since 1990 and served on the MUFON Business Board of Directors for over 20 years. In his retirement, Tom focuses on researching and writing about the MJ controversy. He enjoys reading extensively on topics such as espionage, counterintelligence, and national security. And if you'd like to find out more about Tom, visit his website at tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. And joining me now from San Antonio, Texas, is Tom Whitmore. And Tom, welcome back to the X Zone. How are you tonight, sir?
Thank you, Rob. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm eager to talk with you and your audience.
Tom, what brought you into your interest about UFOs? Did you have a UFO sighting yourself, or is it just something that intrigued you?
Well, it intrigued me, and I like to joke that if you don't want to see a UFO, you want to hang out with me. But I became interested at age 11 when I read 2 books by Donald Kehoe, but I didn't get active until around 1990. I've always read a lot of history, and in the 1980s, I got much more into espionage, the history of the Soviet Union, and intelligence subjects. I happened to turn on the TV in 1988, and I saw the UFO Cover-Up Live program. That really piqued my interest in the government side of things. I became active in the UFO field in 1990, and when I first saw the MJ-12 documents, my interest in espionage and UFOs intersected. So that's how I got to be where I am today. Now, I was married for over 20 years and raised a daughter, so I wasn't able to devote my full time to this until I retired in 2019. So now I'm spending my days, I try to get 4 solid hours a day in on this, researching and writing, and I hope to finish a book about MJ-12. It's going to be a while, but I'm working on it.
Tom, for the listeners who may not know very much about UFOs because they've just joined our networks recently, can you tell us what MJ-12 is?
Well, MJ-12 is an alleged secret government committee that was formed to study the Roswell recovery that allegedly occurred in 1947. Now, personally, I have reason to believe that that did actually happen, but the problem is we've never received official confirmation of that. And in the 1980s, a certain UFO researcher by the name of Bill Moore was digging into what the government knew about UFOs, and he had a number of contacts in both the military and intelligence and in the intelligence agencies. In December 1985, he and his research associate, Jamie Chandray, received some documents on a roll of 35 millimeter film. And on that film were two documents known that we know now today as the Eisenhower briefing document and the Truman-Forrestal memo. Now, the Eisenhower briefing document listed 12 people that were supposedly members of this majestic 12 committee. And they were top military, top scientific, and government people. And the other document was the Truman-Forrestal memo, and it was an alleged memorandum from President Truman that authorized the formation of the MJ-12 committee. Now, the MJ-12 documents themselves are questionable. They have a lot of things wrong with them, and most of them probably are not authentic. But they had induced this notion in the UFO community that the UFO community in the 1980s, from the 1980s onward, has been affected with disinformation. So it has not been a short-term sequence. Two MJ-12 documents appeared in the early 1980s. Then we had the documents that Bill Moore and Jamie Chandray received in 1985. In the 1990s, a person by the name of Timothy Cooper received hundreds of pages of MJ-12 related documents, and a manual came out called the Psalm 101 manual that was related to the recovery of craft and bodies. Then in the 2000s, we had the Serpo story that came out about an alleged exchange program between U.S. government military persons and the extraterrestrial biological entities from the planet Serpo.
Right.
And this still goes on. Even as late as 2017, there was a document posted on the internet that I call the ultra top secret document. And even this year, there has been a guy who's actually in prison but claims to have been recruited by AFOSI, the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, when he was a teenager, and he's posted a 45-page manifesto. So what I'm dealing with is the MJ-12 controversy, because I don't take a strong position one way or the other whether MJ-12 ever existed or not, because we haven't received any official confirmation.
Tom, who was Richard Doty? And why is he important?
Richard Doty was important in the MJ-12 controversy because he was very much involved in the 1980s sequence of events in which the Air Force Office of Special Investigations was promulgating some disinformation and misinformation into the UFO community. Now, Richard Doty himself was an Air Force person. He joined the Air Force in 1968, and he served as a security policeman for about 10 years. And he was inducted into the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, underwent their training, and he was assigned to Kirtland Air Force Base in 1979. In the early 1980s, there was a person by the name of Paul Benowitz who lived adjacent to Kirtland Air Force Base, and he also had a business called Thunder Scientific Labs that was directly adjacent to the base. And Mr. Benowitz had been taking photos of some activity on the base, and he was also recording electronic signals. And this seemed to set off some kind of a counterintelligence operation against Mr. Benowitz, and also related to recruitment of persons in the UFO community, namely Bill Moore and possibly several others. So the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and probably the Defense Intelligence Agency and possibly the National Security Agency were concerned with protecting classified programs on Kirtland Air Force Base, and Richard Doty was involved in that effort.
With all the information that is out there about on the MJ-12, with the ability to spread fake news worldwide on the web, How do you go about deciding what is legitimate and what is fake news?
Well, that's a challenge. Some of the researchers that got involved in this in the early 1980s, they realized and they were told that they were being given information, some of which was true and some of which wasn't, and that it was up to them to try to parse the true information from the not so true information. So what purpose that serves is, if you're trying to distract UFO investigators away from whatever it is that you're protecting, maybe you give them some documents, some of the information is true, very intriguing, very interesting, and some of it is false. So you end up spending a lot of time researching each and every little factoid and fact and element on the document. And now critics of the MJ-12 sequence have pointed out a number of things that were wrong with the Eisenhower briefing document and the Truman-Forrestal memo. So it became apparent that the documents were questionable. But even though they were questionable, it's possible that they do contain some correct information.
What significance, in your opinion, do the MJ-12 papers supply to UFO investigators?
Well, there are three things I'm concerned about.
Okay.
The first is, who created the original MJ-12 documents and why? Okay, that's the first issue. The second issue is, was there an MJ-12? Is there an MJ-12? And did it have anything to do with UFOs or not? It's possible that an MJ-12 existed but didn't have anything to do with UFOs. And the third issue is, it became apparent in the 1980s, and ever since then, the UFO community has been obsessed with disinformation and infiltration, but it became apparent that the UFO community was being infiltrated by one or more intelligence agencies. And these are three issues that I'm concerned with. And in my opinion, it's been a long-term subject.
You know, we've got to go to our first break in about 29 seconds, Tom. When we look at what's happened over the last couple of years, the congressional hearings, they supplied no information. Nothing was new. Of the eyes and the ears of every UFO, investigator, UFO buff, were focused on the hearings. Nothing. Let's talk more about this on the other side of the short break. And Exonation Tom Moore is our special guest this hour. His website is tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. That's tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. And Tom Whitmore and I will return on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues right here from the broadcast center of the X Zone Broadcast Network in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Actually, we're just down the street from Classic 1220 CFAJ FM AM, who are kind enough to stream our show around the world. And they also play it Monday through Friday from 10 until midnight. So whatever you do, if you're driving around Ontario and you want to listen to a great station, Classic 1220 CFAJ on your AM radio dial. And welcome back, everyone. That is Chilliwack with Arms of Mary, and that's a great Canadian song. And I hope that we've made all the Canadian program directors very happy because we have just fulfilled our CanCon obligations by playing that one Canadian song. Well, for this hour anyway. Tom Whitmore is our guest. We're talking about the MJ-12. And Tom, before we went to the break, I was kind of talking about the congressional hearings that took place. And what is your opinion on that? Since you've been studying the MJ-12, and here you had 3 witnesses brought before Congress. Everybody was waiting for the smoking gun to be revealed, and butkus, nothing. How does that make?
Well, the problem is it's not really an investigation. The committee is not an investigatory effort. It's more like exposure. Raising awareness.
I see.
And they're having people testify that have had some connection with the UFO or UAP issue, but they are not in a position to disclose any classified information. So what happens is we've got a lot of critics running around now saying that this is a waste of time. It's a waste of the taxpayers' money because these people are not disclosing, the really good stuff. And I think it is going to raise awareness. For example, there's going to be a hearing tomorrow with Luis Elizondo and Rear Admiral Dr. Tim Gallaudet and Michael Gold and Michael Schellenberger. And I think they're going to raise awareness further. But the problem is it's not like a church committee, like the committee that investigated the CIA or the House committee that investigated the JFK assassination, because they're not forcing people to cough up the goods, so to speak, like by using subpoenas and such.
So with these 4 people going in front of Congress tomorrow, I can understand it being an awareness, but isn't that giving false hope to the people who would really want the proof beyond the shadow of a doubt that what they believe in so full-heartedly is the truth, instead of just more speculation?
Well, it is frustrating. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in this field actively for 30 years, and it's frustrating for me, but I also understand that I'm not sure that a lot of the UFO people in the community really truly understand what we're up against. And when I say they're raising awareness for the people that don't know a lot about the UFO subject and may not follow it closely, if they run across the testimony in these hearings, it's going to help them get a better idea. But for us, people that have been in this a long time, we've studied it, out the hilt, we live it and breathe it, and we do want answers. We want proof. It is frustrating, and a lot of people are getting kind of antsy. Some people are turning on each other about it and blaming other UFO believers for believing in this without having any direct proof. And we just have not received direct confirmation from the government. It just hasn't happened.
Do you think that this is being done on purpose by the government or their agents to cause the confusion and the dissension within the UFO community?
I think they don't want to disclose any real direct evidence. I think that they've had a policy of denial since Project Grudge in the 1940s.
Right.
And in the 50s, there were UFOs sighted on radar and visual sightings over Washington, D.C., and General Sanford came out and said that they were just temperature inversions. They had the Robertson panel, the panel of scientists that studied the sightings to date in the early 50s. They recommended that UFO sightings be downplayed. We had the Condon report in the late 60s, a scientific study of unidentified flying objects. The introduction by Condon stated that it didn't warrant further scientific study. And then if we fast forward to the early 90s, we had the Roswell report, fact versus fiction in
Oh,
the New
right,
Mexico
yeah.
desert. And they said that in that report that they thought that Roswell was a mogul balloon.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had the Roswell report, case closed after that, which was a ridiculous report saying that these crash dummies, so to speak, were the alien bodies. About the same time, there was an investigation from the GAO, the General Accounting Office, and they came out with the result of search for records concerning the 1947 crash near Roswell, New Mexico. Their findings were negative. And then even within the last year or so, we've had this Arrow report under the direction of Sean Kirkpatrick, the report on the historical record of U.S. government involvement with unidentified anomalous phenomena, Volume 1. Mm-hmm. And it tried to give the impression that, the results are negative.
Wow.
And just a few weeks ago, a reporter was bold enough to ask Major General Pat Ryder, who was the Pentagon spokesman, in a press conference. He asked about UFOs, and he said he mouthed the same old line. They had no evidence that UFOs were extraterrestrial or that constituted an issue. So that's where we're at. It's a policy of denial. Now, assuming that there really is something to the UFO problem, and even if the government has recovered, craft and bodies and all this stuff, they have a definite policy of denial.
In your opinion, will there be any changes as far as transparency when President Trump is back in the White House?
I hope there is, but here's the problem. President Trump said that he would release the JFK files that were still remaining when he ran for president last time and didn't do it.
Right.
And what happens is presidents come in with an intent. They want to do something, like President Carter came in.
Right.
And he promised he would release, the UFO information. Well, the Blue Book files were declassified. That's true. But he tried to get NASA involved. NASA wasn't interested, and this kind of a thing. Now, this just remains to be seen, because the so-called military-industrial complex, but the Pentagon and the intelligence community, they're not monolithic, but they're giant.
Right.
They're giant bureaucracies, and they have their own inertia and their own elements and dynamics, and it's just not a simple thing to get them to disclose what you want them to disclose. They can just stonewall. They do it all the time. And then there are United States secrecy laws, and there are executive orders that protect the security and the secrecy about these things, and the Atomic Energy Act. So, I'm not sure that some of the people in the UFO community that are demanding answers really understand what we're up against.
It's not as simple as writing a request for an FOIA, right?
Yeah, and then you wait 3 years to get an answer.
Several years ago, I had Arden Albee on the show, who was the director of NASA at the time. And I asked him point blank, I said, what would happen if NASA came across a UFO? Would NASA suppress the information? He said, my God, no, Rob. We would be out there blowing the information out with bullhorns, because that would guarantee us funding. And I'm saying, well, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You've discovered it. Of course, you're going to go further and further and further. But when I've talked to people like Stephen Bassett, even, good old local Stanton Friedman, it's hard to imagine that all these people could be wrong. And yet, on the other side of the blade, where's the proof? So,
right.
As much as I want to believe there are UFOs, Tom, I must be related to you, because I've never seen one. I want to see one, but I've never seen one.
That might be good. That might actually be good.
I guess, eh? And then looking at Roswell, there's a lot of inconsistencies there. There's a lot of, for example, Jesse Marcel goes to Mark Brazel's farm, picks up debris. Instead of, as soon as he picks it up, it's in the military's, and he has to maintain the chain of custody for the evidence. Instead of driving right back to the base, what does he do? He drives home, brings the stuff inside, and lets his wife and son play with it. As a former cop, as soon as that happened, the case is over because the chain of evidence is broken. And yet everybody kind of surpasses that. So I really don't know. I don't know what really happened in Roswell.
Well, there's been a lot of research done, a lot of investigation. William Moore and Stanton Friedman, when they investigated it in the late 70s, they interviewed over 90 witnesses, some of them firsthand. And then Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall did an awful lot of research on Roswell in the 1980s and 1990s. Kevin Randall is of the opinion that they don't have as strong a case as they used to think they did.
Right.
But that's a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
Now, Richard Doty claims that there are actually two crashes, that the craft were struck by lightning, and one craft landed or crashed near Corona, New Mexico, and the other one landed in a remote part of southwest New Mexico. And the second craft wasn't discovered until 2 years later.
Wow. Tom, you and I have to take our break, so please stand by. I'm sorry for interrupting you. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to get more information about my guest this hour, he's got books. He's got a lot of published articles on his blog spot. That's tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. And we'll be back on the other side of the short break as the Exxon continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you can listen to us around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and, of course, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, who stream us live, I might say, on classic1220.ca. The X Chronicles newspaper is still available for the month of October. All you need to do is go to xchronicles.net. And Tom and I will be back as we continue this very interesting conversation on UFOs, MJ-12, UFO crashes, congressional hearings, and who knows what's next. I'm Rob McConnell. We'll both be back. So whatever you do, don't go away.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance, for a break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough, and it's hard at the end of the day. I need some distraction.
Welcome back, everyone. If you like, love, adore the X-Zone radio show and all the other shows that we do at the X-Zone Broadcast Network, you can now listen to us 7/24/365 simply by going to www.xzbn.net. We stream live 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. And once again, it's free. With compliments of the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Relmar McConnell Media Company, and our fine advertisers. And once again, that's www.xzbn.net. Wow, we are hitting 2 for 2 this hour with Canadian content. Craig, that was Sarah McLachlan, In the Arms of an Angel. Tom Whitmore is my guest. His website is tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. A lot of people talk about Roswell and post that era, but it seems that Kenneth Arnold's sighting gets lost in the shuffle. Do you think that there is a direct correlation with the sighting by Kenneth Arnold and what happened at Roswell?
Well, it is odd that the Kenneth Arnold sighting, I think, was in May or June of 1947, and then you had the alleged Roswell crash in July of 1947. But certain people, like Jan Aldrich with Project 1947, did a lot of work and research on other sightings, and there were actually a huge number of sightings in 1947 all
Really?
across the United States. So when we put the first two together, with Roswell and with Kenneth Arnold, it seems like a coincidence, but at the same time, like I said, there was an awful lot of UFO activity starting in 1947. Now, I'm not sure what about that year is so key, to the UFO activity, but after 1947, it's never been the same. It's just kept going.
To the best of your knowledge, Tom, do all the craft that have been sighted are they similar craft? Are they totally different? I know we've got the triangular craft. We have the cigar-shaped craft. We have the the traditional flying saucer craft. And my question is if these are all different crafts and different descriptions, does that mean we are being visited by all these different species or all these different ETs?
I think probably so. And you named, Rob, you named off a few different types of shapes, but there have been UFOs sighted in just about every shape you could imagine,
Wow.
even ice cream cone shape. And there has been such a variety of shapes, and there's been such a worldwide distribution of UFO activity over a long period of time. I think that it's reasonable to suppose, or at least suspect, that there are at least several groups involved in this. Now, whether they're from the world, from this world, or from another dimension, or from another galaxy, who knows? But there's been enough variety. I mean, variety in the extreme. And if you carefully study the testimony of abductees and of people that have had some kind of contact on the ground, there's just as much of a variety in the types of entities that have been sighted as well.
If we have craft that are able to traverse time and space from God knows where to here, how would it be possible for lightning to take down a UFO?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And Richard Doty, bring him up again, but
Sure.
he's actually very active on the UFO scene right now, and he's given Twitter Spaces, and he's gone on YouTube, podcasts and all this. But his notion is that perhaps the EBEs, the extraterrestrial types, didn't have lightning and had never seen lightning before they came to the Earth. And maybe, now you fly in a jet airliner. A jet airliner is kind of like a Faraday cage.
Sure
is. It's designed so that if it is struck by lightning, it doesn't kill it. But maybe the UFO saucer or saucers are constructed completely differently, and their systems work completely differently than ours do, and maybe lightning had an effect.
That's true. We could also use the same hypothesis as we just used on with lightning to the work that is being done by SETI. I don't know how long they've been, scouring the heavens for a signal, and yet nothing. The odd, strange signal. Yeah, I'll agree. But like I've asked Seth Shostak, I said, how do you know that the people who are sending the transmissions that you hope are there, are using what we understand as radio. What happens if they're so far advanced that we have no idea what's out there? We could be getting splattered by their broadcasts and not understand it because we don't have the receivers to receive it yet. And finally, how do we know that the people or the EBEs that are out there are actually carbon-based units like we are? Maybe they are, who knows, some other base form that we just don't understand. I think we're dealing with a lot of what ifs when it comes to the investigation of UFOs and EBEs.
Well, I'm curious to know, how did he answer your question?
He didn't.
Well, and the more you think about, really, if you think about it, SETI, I mean, nothing against the scientists. I'm sure they're brilliant. You know, they probably got a lot further than calculus than I ever would have. But when you think about SETI, it seems a little bit silly.
It does.
Let's say you get a radio signal, okay? If it's from 10 million light years away, and you'd think that the radio signal would spread out so much they wouldn't hardly get anything by then. Let's say it's 10,000 light years away. You're hearing something that happened 10,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So what good is it? You know. So personally, I think it's a little bit silly.
Mm-hmm. But once again, just getting back to the lightning aspect, if a craft is built to withstand the pressures of space or whatever is out in space, I don't know. I have a bit of a problem understanding how a lightning bolt could disable that craft and cause it to crash. That's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. In your opinion, because you've been doing a lot more research than I have, Tom, and great research, and I, for one, am happy and glad that you're doing what you're doing. What has been the most significant piece of information that you've come across that leads you to believe beyond a shadow of doubt we are being visited by those on the other side of our atmosphere?
Well, what really turned my head and convinced me was when I read through all of Leonard Stringfield's material in the early 1990s. And he had been, Leonard Stringfield was an investigator from Cincinnati, Ohio. He had been in the UFO field for many years. He had a UFO sighting in World War II from an airplane. He actually had a telephone number that the government had him use to call in UFO activity, and in the 50s there was a great deal of in the 50s and 60s, there's a great deal of activity in the Ohio, Kentucky area. And he eventually began collecting these stories of UFO crash retrievals, and he wrote a number of what he called status reports. And at the time that I read those, the abduction issue was getting to be big as well publicly. But after all of the reading that I'd done a lot of general reading on the UFO subject, and in reading Leonard Stringfield's status reports, it's kind of like one of these things you just wake up in a bolt out of the blue and you decide that this is it. I'm convinced. Now, that's just my personal thing.
Right.
Okay. But that's what convinced me.
Do you believe that the reports of ET abductions are true?
I think there have been way too many reports of it to just discard the whole idea. And there has seemed to have been a pattern in these abductions. Mm-hmm. You know, in the 60s and 70s, there was the phenomenon of people driving in cars and a UFO flies over and the radio goes dead or the car goes dead. There was a lot of interaction between UFOs and automobiles. And then it got to the point to where the cars stopped and these beings start walking up to the car, and then they undergo missing time. Then it got to the point to where people were being, or at least telling stories of being abducted out of their homes. And, I'm sure you know the general pattern, how
Yeah.
it goes. They end up on a craft somewhere, and they undergo some kind of medical examination, and you have the women, the ETs are interested in the women's reproductive functions as well as the men, and they seem to be collecting genetic material. The people don't remember what happened to them very well, and some of them recall some of their memories through regressive hypnosis. So there has been a general pattern of that, and there have been an awful lot of those stories and reports. Now, in my opinion, there have been too many to ignore.
Before we go to this break, Kevin Randall had Carol Rayner. Is that her name? Rayner? Bud Hopkins' former wife on his show a couple of years ago. And Bud Hopkins' wife said that Bud was basically a fake. And she said that, yeah, and it was like, what? Oh, yeah. He was a fake. He faked it all. And in fact, he used to direct the sessions into an abduction scenario. Let's talk more on the other side of this break. Exo Nation, Tom Whitmore is our special guest this hour. His website, tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com, and we'll be back as we wrap up this first edition of the X Zone for tonight. And as you know, after the 11 o'clock hour number 2 starts. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM here in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, streaming classic1220.ca.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance.
And there we go to all the programmers here in Canada. Wow, look at that. 3 out of 3 Canadian content in the same hour. Is this a first for us, Craig? It is, eh? Wow. I'm impressed, buddy. I am truly impressed. My guest this hour, Exonation, is Tom Whitmore, and his website is tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com, and we've been talking to Tom about MJ-12 controversy, perspectives on MJ-12, general UFO issues, as well as the congressional hearings. First of all, Tom, thanks very much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure talking to you, sir. And why do you think, Tom, that the governments of the world would suppress the information, especially now with all the speculation and all the hype and, like you were saying, all the different witnesses, relating to every genre of the UFO, UAP phenomenon? Why say it's not real? Why not just come out and get disclosure done and over with so that everybody can move on?
Well, it seems simple to us in the UFO community because we're so convinced that it's true, and we don't have any problem absorbing the possible reality of it. But there are several reasons I can think of why the authorities do not want to release the information. In the first place, that if they do admit it, it proves that they've been lying to the American people and to the world, at least since World War II. Now, it's kind of hard to maintain your credibility when you admit that you've been lying for 80 years. Another fundamental tenet of the founders of the U.S. Constitution is to ensure domestic tranquility. And if for people like me who I live and breathe this stuff.
Hmm.
But for people that don't think about this, maybe people from a completely different religion or a different part of the world, how are they going to react? I think it's totally unknown. It's unpredictable. And if if the information is released, you can't bring it back. You can't unring the bell.
Right.
Okay. And a third reason I think is that they have nothing to gain by releasing the information. In fact, it could cause people to get fired, people to go to jail, uh, funding cut from government agencies, witch hunts, all kinds of things like that that could affect the authorities themselves, and they themselves could be unseated, and it could very well possibly cause some instability around the world. Now, I think that there are a lot of people, even if the government came out and admitted it, we've got such a problem with credibility already. I think a lot of people wouldn't even believe it, which is interesting. But those are some reasons I can think of why they haven't released the information.
I, for one, have often wondered how the government could keep this so securely tight-lipped when the President of the United States can't have an oral sexual affair in the presidential washroom without everybody around the world knowing it within hours. You see, that makes no sense to me.
Well, it does seem that way, but a very large amount of information in the military and in the intelligence community is classified,
Right.
and they have very strong secrecy laws. Employees that are, employees in the intelligence community, and even with a lot of third-party non-government contractors, they sign themselves away. They sign and they promise that they will not reveal any classified information. They can't even discuss it with their spouse. And if they do, there are penalties. And you can go to jail for that. Now, if someone really let's say if you had 10 four-star generals sit down and have a press conference and say, we know that UFOs are real, and the government has been hiding it, then you have a situation, because some people might think, well, you can't arrest all of them. Well, yes, they could. But if they did, it would basically be admitting that these guys were onto something. So, you have that kind of a situation too, but you have a lot of people that are sworn to secrecy,
Right.
and they're patriotic, and they keep the secrets that they're sworn to keep.
But what about the whistleblowers that come forward? Why are they believed? Why aren't they looked at as, well, wait a minute, you've made an agreement to protect your country, you've made an agreement to keep it confidential, and yet you're telling us this confidential information which goes against everything that you have sworn to do. Why should we believe them?
Well, some people don't. There's some in the UFO world that have become so, I call them contrarians.
Okay.
And it's a phenomenon that I outline as follows. They've been interested and absorbed, even obsessed with the UFO problem for many years. And they finally reach a point where, look, we're not getting any answers. And they flip 180 degrees. And now they want to criticize each and every one of these so-called whistleblowers that come in front of Congress or that try to go public. Because, like I said, these are the same people that have been sworn to secrecy, like all these other government and contractor employees, and they would undergo penalties if they revealed any classified information. Now, if a person goes on, say, a radio show like this and says, I believe, I've worked for the U.S. government, and I believe that they have crashed UFOs, we are not really giving any specific information, but if you produced classified documents,
Right.
classified recordings, or classified videos or photographs or physical material, what some people would refer to as the hot stuff, if you produce that, then you'd be in trouble.
To your knowledge, have any whistleblowers ever produced any of this hot stuff?
Well, if they have, it's been in private,
Yeah.
not public. It's too risky to go public.
So where do you think the UFO community is going to go next? What's the next step in trying to get disclosure to happen?
Well, expectations have been raised ever since 2017 when that article came out in the New York Times.
Right.
Excuse me. And we've had, the To the Stars Academy come out with Tom DeLonge and Louis Elizondo and Hal Puthoff and these folks. And that's created some disappointment because the TTSA was hoping to raise capital and they wanted to work on a spaceship and all this, and they just didn't raise enough money to do that. And this incited a lot of cynicism in some of the critics, some of these contrarians. And I think because expectations have been raised to this point that if the government stonewalls long enough, maybe it'll start to go away, and people will. I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of disillusionment. That's my
Tom,
prognosis.
hypothetically, in your opinion, what would have happened if Stanton T. Friedman had never heard of Roswell, New Mexico?
Oh, he had his own UFO spiel. I knew Stanton Friedman. I sat down and coffee with him, looked him in the eye, and asked him hard questions. But he had his whole UFO presentation that he was giving before he ever got involved in the Roswell case. And UFOs are real, and he would quote from Project Blue Book report number 14 and all this. He was a very, very good promoter of the UFO belief system, and I think he would have just kept doing that.
But do you think that the Roswell phenomenon, as we know it today, would have ever come to light?
Well, it's hard to say. You get in research and investigation, you start investigating something, and that information leads to more information, and one thing leads to another, and then pretty soon you're immersed in a topic that maybe you didn't really originally expect to get involved with. And that's one of the things that I really love about doing research. And I'm sitting here trying to write a chapter to my book right now, and I think I've done all the research I need, and then I realize I need to check into this, I need to check into that, and it's a great learning experience.
We've got about 2.5 minutes left. What's your opinion of Skinwalker Ranch?
Well, there are a couple of people that swear that some anomalous things went on there. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of hard evidence. And it seems that, or at least hard evidence that's been published or made public. Now, Robert Bigelow owned the Skinwalker Ranch, and I think Robert Bigelow has a lot of information in his archives and files that he has not released. So maybe there are things that we haven't heard about. But otherwise, I'm not sure that there's really enough to go on with Skinwalker to really get me too excited about it.
So what's next for Tom Whitmore? What are you going to be doing, Tom?
Well, I'm going to keep working on my book. I've written about 3 chapters so far. I'm going to have at least 20 or more, so it's going to be a long slog. I keep doing research. Most of my research is open source, but I do have some other individuals that help me along a little. And I keep turning up new information. I get into new aspects of things. For example, lately I've been looking into radar spoofing, the ability to create false radar returns, phantom aircraft, and I think that may even have been possibly involved with MJ-12. So I just keep reading, researching, and writing. That's my task.
Do you think that we'll ever get to a conclusion one way or another about whether MJ-12 was real or not?
Well, there's one person that I would like to talk to. I don't want to name a name at this point, but it's possible that this person could confirm something.
Really?
And it's interesting because there have been several CIA projects that had two-letter beginnings. And for example, we had JM Wave and ZR Rifle. ZR Rifle was an attempt to assassinate Castro. They had MH Chaos, which was investigation of anti-war protesters. And then, of course, we've all heard of MK Ultra.
Of course.
So why not MJ something?
Tom, we've got to say so long for tonight. Please come back and visit with us again. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, and thank you for all the great work you're doing, as well as all the people at MUFON who really go above and beyond. So thanks very much for joining us, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My great pleasure, sir. All right, X Zone Nation, I'll be back on the other side of this break as hour number 2 of the X Zone starts right now from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. My guest this hour has been Tom Whitmore, and once again, if you'd like to find out more about Tom, his books, and much more, visit tomwhitmoreblog.wordpress.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here on the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, streaming at classic1220.ca.